Wonder isn't an emotion. It's not a feeling you generate. Wonder is your natural operating system. It's the default setting of your consciousness before it learned to protect itself. Check out my activation, activating awe. This is the same vibration. And every limitation you experience, every block, every resistance, it's built on the absence of wonder. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. And today's activation, we're activating childlike wonder. Make your life magical again. As Jesus says, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. I was inspired to do this episode because yesterday I was watching a kid in the grocery store parking lot lose his mind over a puddle. Not a special puddle, just water sitting there on cracked asphalt, reflecting the sky. But he saw it and his whole body lit up. You could see this shift in his energy field. He started jumping in it, laughing like he'd discovered a treasure, splashing around while his mom was trying to load groceries into the car. She kept saying, "Come on, we need to go." But he was gone, completely absorbed. That puddle was the entire universe to him in that moment. Nothing else existed. No future appointment, no past disappointment, no story about who he was or what he should be doing, just pure explosion of aliveness meeting itself. What got me is 3 adults walked by that kid. All of them glanced at the puddle. All of them saw the same water, the same reflection, but their faces stayed flat. They kept walking. They had places to go, thoughts to think, problems to solve. The puddle was invisible to them. Same puddle, different worlds. That's what we're talking about today. Every teacher who ever pointed you toward truth has mentioned it. Just the difference between the kid in the puddle and those 3 adults walking past. The difference between seeing what's actually here and seeing through the filter of everything you've learned about what matters and what doesn't. You used to be that kid. You've jumped in puddles and forgotten the world existed. You've stared at clouds and seen dragons. You believed in things before your mind learned to protect you from belief. You felt the raw electricity of existence before someone taught you to call it mundane. That wasn't immaturity. That wasn't you being naive or uninformed. That was you operating at full capacity with every sense wide open before the dimmer switch got installed. What I want you to understand as we move through this together is that the dimmer switch can come back off. The capacity you had hasn't disappeared. It just got buried under a very specific kind of training. We are activating childlike wonder. Let me take you back for a moment. Not through memory, but through sensation. Think about the last time you saw a child, really saw them encountering something for the first time. Maybe it was rain, maybe it was a butterfly, maybe it was their own reflection. Notice something about that moment? There was no gap between experience and ecstasy, no barrier between perception and pure presence. The child didn't analyze the butterfly, didn't categorize it, didn't compare it to other butterflies they'd seen. They simply exploded into wonder. That explosion, that's not naivety, that's not ignorance. That's the raw, unfiltered experience of reality before the mind wraps it in language, before the ego stamps it with meaning, before society tells you what's supposed to matter and what isn't. You had that. You were that. And then the programming began, subtle at first. Don't get your hopes up. Be realistic. That's just your imagination. You need to focus on practical things. Stop daydreaming. The world doesn't work that way. Each statement a small death, each correction a tiny amputation, of your natural state of being until wonder became something you had to manufacture instead of something you couldn't stop from overflowing. But here's what they didn't tell you, couldn't tell you, because they had forgotten themselves. Wonder isn't an emotion. It's not a feeling you generate. Wonder is your natural operating system. It's the default setting of your consciousness before it learned to protect itself. Check out my activation, activating awe. This is the same vibration. And every limitation you experience, every block, every resistance, it's built on the absence of wonder. Because wonder dissolves effort. Wonder collapses the gap between desire and manifestation. Wonder is the quantum field recognizing itself through your eyes and celebrating that recognition. The teachers who spoke of becoming like a child weren't speaking metaphorically. They were giving you a literal instruction manual for reality creation. Because a child doesn't manifest from a place of lack. A child doesn't worry about how. A child simply knows with every cell of their being that the universe is fundamentally friendly, fundamentally magical, fundamentally responsive. Let's go deeper. Let's look at what wonder actually is, stripped of all the sentimentality, viewed through the lens of consciousness itself. Wonder is the state where the observing self and the observed universe collapse into a single point of ecstatic recognition. It's not you looking at something wonderful. It's the universe recognizing itself through the aperture of your own awareness and grasping at its own infinite creativity. Children live in this state naturally because they haven't yet constructed the elaborate prison of separate selfhood. They haven't learned to see themselves as isolated fragments moving through a hostile, indifferent universe. They're still merged with the field. Watch a 3-year-old. They don't question whether they'll be taken care of. They don't ruminate about past failures. They don't catastrophize about future disasters. They're here now, completely available to whatever wants to emerge through this moment. And because they are available, reality bends toward them in ways that seem miraculous to the adults who have forgotten how to bend. Wonder reorganizes your relationship with existence itself. You stop trying to get something from the universe and start dancing with it, co-creating with it, recognizing that you and it are movements of the same underlying consciousness. The ancient texts spoke of this. They called it different names: faith, surrender, presence. But underneath all the names is the same thing: the dissolution of the separate self that believes it must struggle, strive, and suffer to receive its good. A child asking for something isn't wondering if they deserve it. They're not running through their unworthiness checklist. They're simply expressing a preference, and they trust, with a trust that precedes thought, that the universe heard them. And it does, it always does. But here's where it gets really interesting. Wonder doesn't just make you feel better. Wonder restructures your neural pathways, rewrites your subconscious programming. And most importantly, it alters your vibrational frequency in ways that make you a magnet for synchronicity, opportunity, and what others call luck. Science is beginning to catch up with what the mystics have always known. When you're in a state of wonder, your brain produces specific neurochemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, that don't just make you feel good. They make you more creative, more intuitive, more capable of seeing solutions that were invisible to your stressed, contracted adult mind. Your heart coherence increases. Your electromagnetic field expands. You become a more powerful broadcaster of intention into the quantum field. But we were trained out of this, systematically, efficiently, with the best of intention, perhaps, but with devastating consequences. Let me ask you something. When did you become so serious? When did the weight of the world land on your shoulders and convince you it was yours to carry? There's a heaviness that most adults wear like armor. They call it maturity, they call it responsibility, they call it facing reality. But what if it's actually an elaborate defense mechanism against the terrifying beauty of existence? Because wonder makes you vulnerable. Wonder requires you to let down your guard, to admit that you don't have it all figured out, to acknowledge that mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. And vulnerability in this world is dangerous. Or so you were told. So you learned to substitute analysis for experience. You learned to overthink instead of overflow. You learned to be smart instead of amazed. You learned to be right instead of curious. And with each substitution, the walls grew thicker, the light grew dimmer. The magic reached into memory, into childhood, into once upon a time. But your soul remembers, your body remembers, every cell in your being remembers what it felt like to be fully alive, fully present, fully enchanted with the extraordinary ordinariness of existence. And that remembering is calling to you right now. It's been calling to you through every moment of dissatisfaction, every feeling of flatness, every sense that something essential is missing from your life. What's missing isn't money, isn't a relationship, isn't success. What's missing is your willingness to be astonished, your permission to delight, your courage to wonder, because seriousness is expansive. It costs you your health, your body tightens, your breath shortens, your immune system weakens. It costs you your relationships. You become critical, cynical, closed. It costs you your creativity. You can only see what you've already seen. Think what you've already thought. Most devastating, seriousness costs you your connection to the source of all manifestation. Because the creative force of the universe doesn't respond to striving, it responds to alignment. And alignment feels like wonder. Alignment feels like play. Alignment feels like a child who just discovered they can make bubbles appear from a wand dipped in soap. The people who manifest effortlessly, who seem to move through life with an inexplicable grace, they haven't mastered some complex technique. They've simply never fully abandoned their childlike wonder, or they found their way back to it. And that's what's happening right now. As you listen to these words, the walls are getting thinner. The armor is softening. The serious adult persona that you've been performing is starting to recognize itself as a costume you put on, not who you actually are. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. Play isn't the opposite of work. Play is the natural state of consciousness when it's creating. Every major breakthrough in human history, every invention, every artistic masterpiece, every scientific discovery, they all came from people who were willing to play with possibility, who were willing to ask what if without already knowing the answer. Einstein didn't discover relativity through grim determination. He imagined riding on a beam of light. He played with the universe in his mind until the universe revealed its secrets. Mozart didn't compose through suffering. He heard music everywhere and couldn't help but translate what he heard into form. The greatest creators in any field are those who maintained their capacity for wonder, for experimentation, for approaching their work with the energy of a child building sandcastles on a beach. And here's the part that changes everything. This same energy, this playful, wondering, experimental approach, it's the master key to personal reality creation. When you're playing, you're not attached to outcomes. You're exploring. When you're wondering, you're not demanding results. You're discovering. And in that space of exploration and discovery, you become infinitely more powerful than when you're grasping and forcing and trying to make things happen. The universe doesn't respond well to desperation. It doesn't reward grim determination. it mirrors back to you the energy you're broadcasting, and if you're broadcasting struggle, you get more things to struggle against. But when you're broadcasting wonder, when you're in that childlike state of let's see what happens, you're in energetic alignment with the creative force itself. You are no longer trying to bend reality to your will. You're dancing with it, you're co-creating with it, and reality loves to dance. Every authentic teacher of consciousness, every mystic worth their salt, has pointed you back to this state because it's the most sophisticated, most advanced, most powerful technology for reality transformation that exists. A child doesn't manifest from poverty consciousness. They don't create from lack. They see a toy in a store window and they don't think, I'm not worthy of that, or I don't have enough money for that. That's for other people, not for me. They simply see it, want it, and trust that the universe will conspire to bring it to them. And more often than not, it does. Through parents, through gifts, through unexpected opportunities. I'm not saying you should approach adult responsibilities like a 3-year-old, but I am saying that the energy underneath your adult activities can completely transform you when you infuse it with wonder. Imagine approaching your business with curiosity instead of anxiety. Imagine meeting each day as an adventure instead of a burden. Imagine treating your goals not as desperate needs, but as exciting experiments in possibility. Everything shifts. The same actions, but completely different energy underneath them. And it's the energy that creates, not the action. So how do we get back? How do we return to this state after decades of conditioning, after years of disappointment, after so much evidence that the world is harsh and we need to be realistic? First, understand that innocence is not ignorance. You don't have to erase your experience. You don't have to pretend you haven't been hurt, haven't failed, haven't learned hard lessons. True innocence, the kind that creates worlds, is innocence that includes your experience but isn't defined by it. It's the ability to meet each moment fresh without the heavy baggage of past disappointments coloring your perception of present possibilities. A child falls down. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they get hurt. But watch what happens next within minutes, sometimes seconds. They're ready to try again. They haven't created an identity around their failure. They haven't written a story about why walking is impossible for them. They just get up and keep going. That's the innocence you're returning to, not naivety, not denial, but a fundamental trust that this moment is not defined by past moments. That possibility is always present. That the universe is fundamentally generative, not punitive. And here's the beautiful secret: that innocence is still within you. It never left. It just got buried under layers of protection, under walls of rationalization, under mountains of should and must and have to. Something in you is recognizing the truth of what I'm saying, a reminder of something you've always known. You can feel it, can't you? That slight shift in your chest, that subtle lightening in your solar plexus, the quiet whisper saying, yes, this is true, I remember. That's your inner child. That's your essential nature. That's the you that existed before the world told you who you were supposed to be. And it's still here, still whole, still capable of wonder, still ready to create magic. The return doesn't require years of therapy or complicated techniques. It requires a simple choice, repeated moment by moment, the choice to meet life with curiosity instead of judgment. To approach each experience with openness instead of cynicism. To allow yourself to be surprised, delighted, amazed by the ordinary miracle of existence. Start small. Notice something today that you've seen 1,000 times but have stopped really seeing: a tree, a cloud, the way light moves across a surface. Let yourself really look at it as if for the first time. That is wonder. That's simple, that profound. Notice how it feels in your body when you do this. Notice the shift in your energy. You're not trying to manufacture a feeling. You're removing the filters that have been blocking your natural state of wonder. There's something remarkable that happens when you activate wonder. Your body begins to heal itself, literally. When you're in wonder, you shift out of the stress response that keeps your nervous system in constant fight or flight mode. Your parasympathetic nervous system activates. Your body remembers it's safe to repair, to regenerate, to thrive. Chronic tension begins to release. Inflammation decreases. Your immune system strengthens. Your cells receive the message that the emergency is over, that it's safe to grow instead of merely survive. This is why children heal so quickly. Not just because they're young, but because they're not carrying the chronic stress that keeps adult bodies in a constant state of defensive contraction. When you return to wonder, you return to the healing state. Your body remembers its blueprint for wholeness. Your cells remember their original instructions for optimal functioning. But it goes deeper than physical healing. Wonder heals your relationship with yourself. When you're in wonder, you're not judging yourself. You're not comparing yourself. You're not criticizing the person you see in the mirror. You're simply here, experiencing, allowing, being. And in that allowing, the harsh voice that's been narrating your life begins to soften. The critic takes a rest. The inner taskmaster loosens its grip. You start to treat yourself the way you'd treat a beloved child, with patience, with kindness, with encouragement rather than condemnation. Wonder heals your relationships. When you approach others with curiosity instead of judgment, when you allow them to surprise you instead of trapping them in your fixed ideas about who they are, everything transforms. When you stop trying to change people and start appreciating them, you stop demanding that they meet your needs and start discovering what wants to emerge in the space between you. Your relationships become lighter, more spontaneous, more alive. Wonder heals your relationship with abundance. Because when you're in wonder, you're not focused on what's missing. You're overwhelmed by what's present. A child with $1 feels rich because they're fully appreciating what they have, marveling at the possibilities contained in that single dollar. When you return to that state, you discover abundance everywhere, in the morning light, in a moment of laughter, in the breath moving through your lungs, in the miracle of consciousness itself. When you feel abundant, you become a magnet for more abundance. Because like attracts like. Because consciousness responds to consciousness. Because the universe mirrors back to you your inner state. Here's why all the manifestation techniques in the world won't work if you're approaching them from a state of lack, from a place of I need this or I'm not okay. But approach life from wonder, from look at all that's already here and imagine what else might emerge. And the floodgates will open. I'm telling you from personal experience. In a world that profits from your insecurity, that feeds on your fear, that depends on your feeling of lack, wonder is revolutionary. In a world that demands you be perpetually dissatisfied, so you'll keep consuming, being genuinely amazed by what you already have is an act of rebellion. In a world that wants you small, manageable, predictable, accessing the infinite creative potential of childlike wonder is downright dangerous to the status quo. Because people in wonder don't make good consumers. They're too busy creating to be obsessed with acquiring. They're too fascinated by possibility to be paralyzed by marketing messages telling them they're not enough. People in wonder don't make good followers. They're too curious to accept dogma, too willing to question, to swallow propaganda, too connected to their own inner knowing to hand over their power to external authorities. People in wonder are dangerous because they're free. Free from the matrix of consensus reality, free from the prison of limiting beliefs, free from the chains of how it's always been done. And that freedom is contagious when you walk through the world in wonder. You give others permission to do the same. Your presence becomes an invitation. Your energy becomes a catalyst. Your very existence becomes a reminder that there's another way to be human. This is why they tried to train it out of you. Not through malice necessarily, but through a system that requires conformity to function. that needs people to stay in their boxes, follow their scripts, not ask too many questions. But you're not here to fit in those boxes. You never were. You're here to explode the boxes, to show what's possible when a human being remembers their true nature, to demonstrate that the limitations we accept as reality are actually just agreements we made, and agreements can be unmade. Every moment you choose wonder over worry, you're casting a vote for a different kind of world. A world where human beings aren't cogs in machines, but conscious creators of their experience. A world where magic isn't relegated to childhood, but recognized as the fundamental operating principle of existence. The most clear-eyed, most courageous thing you can do, see the world exactly as it is, and still choose to approach it with wonder. Because wonder doesn't require everything to be perfect. It doesn't demand that all problems be solved. It simply asks, in the midst of all this, in the middle of the complexity and chaos and uncertainty, can you still find something that takes your breath away? And when you can, you choose to, you tap into the power that no circumstances can diminish, no challenge can defeat, no obstacle can block. You become unstoppable. Not through force, but through flow, not through resistance, but through resonance. Not through fighting against what is, but through aligning with what is possible. Let's bring this down to earth. How do you actually live this? How do you maintain wonder in a world that's constantly trying to beat it out of you? First, understand that wonder isn't something you do. It's something you allow. You don't manufacture it. You remove the obstacles to it. The biggest obstacle is the voice in your head that's constantly narrating, judging, comparing, analyzing. That voice has its place. It's useful for certain tasks, but it's not who you are, and it's not in charge of your experience unless you let it be. Practice catching that voice. Notice when it's running its familiar scripts. This is boring. I already know this. Nothing special ever happens to me. I need to be doing something more important. Just notice, don't fight the voice. Don't try to suppress it, just notice it. And in noticing, you create a little bit of space between you and it. In that space, wonder lives. Second, make time for purposelessness. We're so trained to be productive, to be efficient, to maximize every moment. But wonder emerges in the spaces between productivity. Walk without a destination. Look without an agenda. Listen without trying to figure out what it means. Give yourself permission to waste time in the most beautiful way possible by being fully present to whatever arises. Third, practice beginner's mind. Approach familiar things as if you've never seen them before. Your morning coffee, your partner's face, the route you drive every day. What would you notice if you were seeing it for the first time? What details have you stopped registering because you think you already know what's there? Fourth, follow your curiosity without needing it to lead somewhere. Let yourself wonder about things without turning every interest into a project or a goal. Wonder for the sake of wonder. Curiosity for the sake of curiosity. Fascination for the sake of fascination. Your soul's navigation system recalibrating to what actually matters to you, not what you've been told should matter. Fifth, spend time with children if you can. Watch how they move through the world. Notice their energy. Feel how different it is from the hurried, worried, serious energy of adults. Let yourself be infected by their wonder. Let their presence remind you of what you've forgotten. Sixth, reduce your exposure to media that profits from your fear, your anger, your outrage. Not to stick your head in the sand, but to stop letting other people's agendas colonize your consciousness. You can be informed and engaged without being consumed. You can care about the world without letting the world's problems eliminate your capacity for joy. What most people miss about manifestation, about creation, about making their dreams real is that thing you want isn't actually what you want. What you want is the feeling you think the thing will give you. the state of being you believe you'll access once you have it. Here's the secret that collapses all time, all effort, all struggle. That state of being, it's available right now. It's available through wonder. You want abundance? Wonder is the feeling of abundance. You want freedom? Wonder is the experience of freedom. You want love? Wonder is the essence of love. You want purpose? Wonder reveals purpose in every moment. You want healing? Wonder is the healing state itself. You want to feel alive? Wonder is aliveness itself. So when you activate wonder, you're not just accessing a feeling. You're stepping into the energetic blueprint and signature of everything you've been seeking. And when you're vibrating at that frequency, when you're broadcasting that energy, the universe has no choice but to mirror it back to you in form. The universe mirrors back to you your inner state because you aligned with it. This is what the masters meant when they said the kingdom is within you. When they said become like a child. When they said the secret is to feel the wish fulfilled before you have evidence of it. They were pointing you to wonder, to that state where you're so full, so complete, so absolutely satisfied with the magnificence of being alive that you're not grasping for anything. And from that place of non-grasping, everything flows to you effortlessly, naturally, inevitably, because you're no longer in the energy of lack trying to get. You're in the energy of fullness, and fullness attracts more fullness. You're no longer manifesting from desperation, you're creating from inspiration. You're no longer working against reality, you're dancing with it. And reality loves nothing more than to dance with someone who remembers how to wonder. Now I want you to notice what's different right now in your body, in your energy, in your sense of possibility. Something has shifted, hasn't it? Even if you can't name it precisely, even if it's subtle, there's a lightness that wasn't there before, an opening, a softening, just from listening to this activation. That's what this is supposed to do. That's not something I did to you. That's something you remembered. That's your natural state reasserting itself once the noise quieted down enough for you to feel it. And here's the beautiful thing. Now that you remembered, now that you felt it, you could return to it any time. It's not dependent on circumstances. It's not dependent on having everything figured out. It's not dependent on being perfect or enlightened or having done enough inner work. It's always available right here, right now. All you have to do is pause, breathe, look around, and ask yourself a simple question. What's amazing about this moment? Not what's wrong, not what needs to be fixed, not what's missing. What is amazing? There's always something, even in the darkest moments, even in the hardest times. There's always something that if you really look at it, if you let yourself see it, it's absolutely extraordinary. The fact that your heart is beating without you having to think about it, that your lungs are breathing, that you're conscious, that you can think and feel and choose and create, that's not mundane. That's miraculous. And when you can see the miracle in the ordinary, you've mastered the secret. You've remembered what you came here to remember. But here's what I want you to do in the coming days. Catch yourself when you slip into seriousness. Not to beat yourself up about it, just to notice, to smile at yourself, to remember you have a choice. Look for wonder everywhere, not as a technique, but as a spiritual practice, as an adventure, as a game, as a delicious secret you're in on while everyone else is sleepwalking through their days. Share it when you can. When you feel genuine delight in something, let it show. When something strikes you as amazing, say so. When you feel that surge of childlike excitement, don't suppress it to look professional or mature or cool. Let yourself be seen in your wonder. Because the world needs this right now, not more cynicism, not more criticism, not more heaviness. The world needs people who remember how to be amazed. Who remembers how to play? Who remembers that reality is far more magical, far more responsive, far more friendly than we've been told. You are that person you always were. So as we come to the end of this activation, I want you to leave with this. You're not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. Your consciousness itself playing in human form, pretending to have forgotten your true nature so you can have the joy of remembering. And wondering is how you remember. Wondering is how you return home. Wondering is how you access your power. Wondering is how you create worlds. The child you were is not gone. It didn't disappear when you grew up. It's been waiting patiently, quietly for you to remember, for you to come back, for you to reclaim your birthright of joy, of magic, of infinite creative potential. Today, you have done that. Today, you have activated something that's been dormant. Today, you've chosen wonder over worry. And that choice, that simple choice, changes everything. Because you can't unknow what you now know. You can't unfeel what you felt. This activation has occurred. The remembering has begun. And from this moment forward, every time you choose wonder, you're strengthening that connection. You're deepening that state. You're becoming more fully who you always were meant to be. Magnificent, powerful, free. Like a child who knows without a shadow of a doubt that they are loved, supported, and capable of anything because you are. Welcome back to wonder. Welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to the reality you came here to create. The adventure is just beginning. And it's going to be amazing, just like Jesus told us. Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Join the Reality Revolution tribe on school at skool.com/Reality Revolution. Sending all my light and love to you, and welcome to the Reality Revolution. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm Brian Scott, and I have a huge announcement. I'm so excited to finally let you know that on February 27th at the Newark Airport Hilton, we're holding a 3-day immersive meditative experience designed to create the most profound transformation possible. We created this event specifically because so many of you couldn't make it to the LA event. We got to work, and after looking everywhere, we found the Newark Airport Hilton to be the most central and reasonably priced location. You don't just learn about timeline shifting, you actually do it. You don't just understand the concepts philosophically, you embody them. On Friday, we start with activating your pineal gland, your gateway to higher consciousness. Then you meet your higher self and learn to quantum jump into your greatest timeline. And by the end of the day, you will do my most powerful meditation where you actually become your future self from that greatest timeline. We get together for a group karaoke and sing along and a community celebration because joy and connection are just as essential to your transformation as the deep work. This is your invitation to step into the life that's calling you forward. Let's do this together. I can't wait to meet you. Once again, it's www.brianscottlive.com/February-2026.